My name is Kim Larson, and I'll be taking us through how to understand Daylight's suggested concepts using and explaining some of the terminology we use. So let's start with, what are suggested concepts? Suggested concepts are concepts that reflect AI confidence, but confidence about what? Each of our features evaluates concepts in unique ways. Volume surfaces what is most common. Galaxy surfaces what is related to what. Drivers surfaces what is associated with scores or any linear numerical metadata. And sentiment surfaces what people are speaking most strongly about. Prevalence reflects how often a concept is mentioned in a given project compared to how often we'd expect that same concept to be mentioned in a given language or out in the wild. How often do we talk about messaging versus how often do we talk about mitochondria? The exact number of times a concept is mentioned is the frequency. Frequency is a number, prevalence is like a ratio, with the denominator being expectations. Once a concept is identified, we can examine the context by looking at the associations. Associations reflect the strength of relationships between concepts. This is done by working with the concept vector calculations within the Luminoso engine. We don't need to know about that exactly to see that beer is related to brew, drinkable, and overall. With the association calculations, Daylight surfaces what we would call conceptual matches. Conceptual matches are concepts with high associations with one another. Here I'm adding concepts I like with the highest associations to build my tag or advanced concept. This pulls in new conceptual matches for me to consider and add if I'd like. Stepping back for a moment, if we go back to Galaxy, we can observe the clusters of words forming themes. Here I'm dragging around beer, but we can also see finish, tongue, warms, etc., kind of adjacent to it. In beer reviews, overall summaries of beer are standard practice, and the language around it isn't very robust. In contrast, we can see that Pours has more language around it, including bubbles, lacing, tan, thin, etc. And the flavor and scent cluster has its own section of descriptors that's a bit wider. Daylight doesn't just surface word associations. We also correlate what is said in the text with the associated metadata. Daylight doesn't restrict what numerical data is included in a project. One could examine what concepts were related to ABV values. How strongly does the alcohol by volume level play into the beer experience? If the scores are similar for documents containing a concept, the AI confidence increases identifying that as an insight. In this case, if someone mentions watery when describing beer, those on average tend to be beers with lower overall scores, whereas perfect beers get higher scores. All of this may be obvious to folks who've had a beer. This is particularly powerful when paired with concept level sentiment. So unlike drivers, sentiment looks into the story being told in order to determine whether something is good or bad. In this example, oily was defined as a concept that people felt strongly about when describing their beer. Daylight then surfaces some examples. Negative, oily here is in the context of heavy and overwhelming, negative sentiment. Positive, oily here is in the context of excellent balance, rich, perfect texture, creamy, just right, where oily is described as a positive thing. And neutral, oily here is a statement of fact, standalone statement near medium bodied, another statement of fact, no emotion, just a plain descriptor. So let's summarize what we've covered. 1, what's in my data? What's prevalent? What are the conceptual matches? How did the AI come up with those? How do I find themes? And what is related to beer versus orange? Second is, so what? How are people feeling? What words are being used to articulate those feelings? Is this thing a silver lining in an otherwise terrible story? Or is this one disappointment in an otherwise fantastic experience? Now you can take those concepts, those ideas, and flip them back into volume or galaxy to dig deeper. How often is perfect, a sentimental word, being used in different categories? Which beers are being described as oily, and what are their average scores? So much to explore in your stories and so much more to investigate. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Like the video, subscribe, check out our other videos, and reach out if you'd like to learn more. But good seeing you all today, and I'll see you all next time.